follow your heart and never regret anything. So in many ways, the decisions I take, I use my heart first before I use my brain, which is not always as clever, but you not always take the best decisions with your heart. Sometimes you got to use your brains. But one of the things, because there's a second rule, right? Follow your heart is rule number 1. Rule number 2 is never regret anything. So the moment I follow my heart, I can't regret that decision that I took with my heart, because I must have stood fully behind that decision. So from that perspective, I can't regret it. I might later say, that was a stupid decision. I should have thought with my brain first. But I think that's what passionate people do. So, yeah.
Welcome to a new episode of the DefDevice Podcast. Today I have my good friend Frank Amptmeijer with me. Welcome, Frank.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Dano.
Yes, Frank, thank you for joining. Your second name is a bit tricky for me to spell, but I think, did I get close? It's Amptmeijer, right?
Correct, yes. It's a name that exists somewhere in the Alsace, and so that's France and Germany. That's where it originates from. So yeah,
France and Germany. Well, dude, I can relate to that. But you're Dutch, right? You're
Dutch,
from
correct. Yeah,
you're from the Netherlands.
that is correct. Yeah.
Cool. And today you live in Malaysia, in Ululangat, if I'm not mistaken, which is only 30 kilometers or so away from where I live. So we are basically neighbors.
We're neighbors, with another 10 million people, but
yeah. And we have, the last time we met, what was a very special event in the middle of the jungle. It was about planting trees. And I joined this event and I was quite amazed. And it's not just about planting trees. There's a big backstory to that, which I will obviously invite you to share. And tell us more. What is TreeTherium about?
Okay, so TreeTherium, in principle, our tagline is tokenizing tree planting worldwide. And tokenizing says already that it has a little bit to do with the blockchain and crypto. So every tree that gets planted ends up on the blockchain, and with that, it makes the tree immutable, and the actual planting event also immutable. Immutable means it can't change. So all the data that we attach to that specific tree, in principle, is there forever. Once it's on the blockchain, it's there forever. And so we started TreeTherium. I think I started TreeTherium about 3 years ago, but we didn't call it TreeTherium at the time. We called it Plant Trees Today. I did this with a partner here in Malaysia. We started a small organization. It was all still in COVID. So we said after COVID, all of this is going to happen. And then, everybody went back to work after COVID, and more or less we put the plans in the fridge for a while. And at a later stage, this is about a year ago, I started to shape it a bit more, and we really got a good idea on where we wanted to take it. And then, of course, I had to introduce the ideas to my shareholders, which was not too easy, because before this, we were building property developers software, so software for the real estate industry. And it's a little bit of an extension. TreeTherium is an extension of what we were doing before, because we were managing people and tasks. And in principle, in TreeTherium, you're also going to be managing a community of people, of planters, but also landowners and, of course, investors. So from that perspective, there's a lot similarities to what we did before and what we are going to do now. But one thing that I saw with TreeTherium is going to be something that I really, really have a passion about, and also see that in 500 years from now, probably in 5,000 years from now, people are still planting trees. So it's a very long-term plan. Let's put it this way. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I was so amazed by this combination of planting trees and blockchain, and to actually create a record for every planted tree on the blockchain. To me, that was super fascinating. And I never heard of anything even close to that. So yeah. So how did this idea come about? I mean, it sounds so very, very special.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. In the when we were developing the real estate software, we had a joint venture with a Dutch company before, and there came a moment where we had to say goodbye to each other. That had to do with an acquisition on their end, and any companies outside of the European continent were outside of the boat. So that included us here in Malaysia. And we were taking care of the Asian market. So we then decided to build our own platform. We took about 2.5 years to build that. And so we learned a lot on how you build platforms and applications and all this. We were doing this before, but not at the scale that we were doing this with. Then COVID happened. And of course, the industry changed in many, many different ways. So I've been looking because I was already playing with blockchain and with crypto since about 2016, late 2016, early 2017. And I always thought, how can I apply this to my current business? How can blockchain play a part in managing real estate management and maintenance? And I had a good idea on how to do that, but also because our system was so complex, we as a team, so internally the tech team, we didn't have that knowledge yet. And we also didn't really understand where we would find the talents to bring these in. We've spoken to some European people and some people from the US, and they were all extremely expensive. So we were like, yeah. And here in Malaysia, we found a few people, but they didn't really fit our team yet. So for a long time, I've been thinking on how to apply blockchain to my business. And then once we came out of COVID, the whole industry in the real estate management and maintenance part had changed tremendously from a financial point of view. So I didn't want to be part of that game. And now we are here. We have a system. We got a beautiful system. It works. It can handle thousands of transactions per day, for instance, but we didn't have customers anymore. So from that perspective, I started looking at new things. And then one moment I probably woke up and I said, this is what I'm going to do. I still have this idea of plant trees today in the fridge. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to attract the right people that do understand blockchain. I spoke to some universities. I had some contacts with universities. Then I found out that one of the largest cryptocurrencies in the world, a company called Solana, among the top 5 in the world, actually opened an office here. We had a very active team here. So we connected about 6-7 months ago. And that's where, for me, the real magic happened. Then there was, in business, I think there's 5 main item pillars in business, and timing is one of them. And this was exactly the right time. If I would have made these decisions 3 years ago, I probably would have ended in a dead end. But there was a summit. There was a Solana summit, and they could have held that Solana summit anywhere in the world, but they held it in KL. And it was 700 people. There were people that flew in for the weekend all the way from the UK and Canada. Amazing, totally amazing pool of talents, pool of ideas, excitement. And that's where really for me, and luckily I brought one of my shareholders with me from the company behind TreeTherium. And yeah, all of us said, this is it. This is the way to go. And more or less, this is in July. And that's where we really put our foot down and said, okay, let's do it. And that really convinced the shareholders. So that was where it got, because not all shareholders were so convinced that we had to move from real estate into planting trees. They couldn't see what I saw. And I was probably not able enough at that moment to really express what I was seeing in the future. Yeah.
That is so fascinating. So you're the guy with the vision. And you will reward people for planting trees, and I think that is definitely something that this planet needs, and it has a very deep purpose and mission behind it. So I really admire what you have been doing there, and I have a lot of respect for this kind of initiative to make stuff like that happen. And if it becomes profitable, even, I mean, I will really chapeau, as they say in French. Pull my hat. And but of course, I mean, I wish you all the best with that, and I will be happy to support you. On one of the reasons I invited you to this podcast is also to spread the word about what you do.
Thank you very much, Dano. Can I ask you one simple question? Maybe this is an interesting one for any viewers.
That's very unusual. You ask me a question. Okay, go ahead.
Well, later you'll find out why I'm able to do that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Hey, do you know how big is a football pitch, right? A football field. It's 100 meters by 50 meters, right?
Yeah,
do you know how many football fields are removed from this planet every day? Do you have any idea? In timber, in forest.
Oh, in terms of forest.
Forest.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I'm sure it's a frightening big number. But tell me.
Just pick a number.
I don't know. 500.
500. Sounds fair, right? The only problem is it's 42 per minute, every minute of every day. Is unbelievable.
Wow.
So once
42 football fields per minute of
Per
forest
minute.
are being removed
Yes.
per minute.
Yes. And of course, some of these forests are pristine rainforests as well. And this is, I mean, we live in a country where there's a lot of illegal logging. If we look at our neighbors in Thailand and Indonesia, there's a lot of illegal logging as well. So from that perspective, we're not planting enough. And this is where we knew that for TreeTherium, we have a business case. There's an opportunity here. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, that is a shocking number of 42
Shocking number.
per minute.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I guess, we need to buckle up and bring more trees back to this planet. But thanks for the insight. I mean, this is one of these numbers that most people, I mean, nobody knows basically.
Correct.
It's like when I ask, like, what is the ranking of Amazon marketplaces, and nobody knows that Amazon Japan is number 4. This is like my trick question kind of, but 42 football fields per minute. That is something to keep note of, and maybe to focus on supporting your cause.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. So now is the time for time travel, Frank. I warned you before. We will be time traveling. We will go and meet 10 years old Frank. And then we are curious to see how he became today's Frank. So please let us know, what was 10 years old Frank about? Where was he living? What was going on his mind? And what were his ambitions and dreams about life?
Right. You only asked me about 10 minutes ago, just before this podcast. But so I positioned myself somewhere in summer because I hate winters. However, I like winter sport, but I hate winters in general. So I positioned myself somewhere in summer in the year 1973, an important moment in time in Europe. You know, we had an oil crisis and all of this. And at that time, of course, I was schooling. I was a Boy Scout and I played football. I lived in the south of the Netherlands. I'm originate from the area around Eindhoven. Most people know PSV Eindhoven as a football club. That's where I've been born, around that area. But I lived all the way in the south, very near to the German border, near Aachen and Geilenkirchen, in a little town called Brunsum. At that time in Brunsum, life was not so good. Actually, life was good. It was the 70s, you know, there was a lot of opportunities. But it's a coal mining area, Brunsum. And we just closed, just a couple of years before, they closed the last coal mine. So there was a lot of sadness. A lot of people lost their livelihoods. And people weren't poor, but, you know, people were complaining a lot, I would say. So that was a bit of a negative. But I think in many ways I had a very happy childhood, always nice little friends around me, and we were very active. And my parents took us traveling quite a bit. My parents had a cafe and what we would call a B&B, more or less, a bed and breakfast upstairs. We had about 4 or 5 rooms. And in the town where I lived, and this is where the international part probably came in, was a NATO base inside the town. So we had a lot of Americans and Canadian and UK military personnel, all high level, all officer level, because it was actually a paper NATO base. All the paperwork more or less gets shuffled there. Worked about 3,000-4,000 people at the time, and so and we were the first bar and restaurant next to the NATO base. So we had so many walk-in customers over the years, and these people, they would stay for 6 months and they would move on to the next NATO base in Europe. And so, that's where I actually picked up English quite quickly when I was at a young age, and it really, really interested me. Yeah.
Wow. So next to a NATO base.
Next to a database, It was called at that time. It was called AFCENT, so it was a Central European NATO base.
Yeah. And what do you feel like was the next decision that you made in your life as a teenager? Like, was it towards studies? Was it towards? Did you have any kind of ambition, like what you want to become when you grow up? Did your parents tell you what to become or who to be, or become a doctor or something? Or when was the first time that you came up with this kind of passion in your heart where you said, "Oh, I want to do this"?
Yeah, interesting. Okay, where to start? I think at that age, I was about 10, 11 years old. My parents took a radical decision, very unexpected, but they decided to divorce. So
Oh.
that changed the course of life a bit, because my parents always had business prior to that moment. And so my parents' last business was that restaurant, B&B and bar in Brunson. And before that, my father was a real entrepreneur. He always bought bankrupt businesses and built them up quite quickly, 3, 4,
Wow.
6 months. And in principle, the moment he felt the business case is there, he had it up for sale again. And over the years, we had many different bars, restaurants, discotheque, record stores, comes an interesting part later on, and gas stations. So I lived when I was 14 years old, I moved for the 16th time.
There you go.
Because, yeah, so because my parents really, they bought businesses and sold businesses. And so at an early stage, I also saw that my father was very, very entrepreneurial. My mom was more like the power behind. She would take care of, the infrastructure, I would say. My father would be the head and leading. And he's also very much an idea and creative guy, a very, very creative person. And it made me travel a lot. So often I made friends, and 6 months later we would be moving. So that probably over my lifetime would have given me the ideas of, okay, wherever I lay my head, that I have to call home for however long I want to. Yeah.
But I would say you were very lucky to have such an entrepreneur as a father. So I guess you were already exposed to the idea of entrepreneurship, and even this acquisition model, which it's not so many people are familiar with, which I find really fascinating. But your father was doing this, like in the 70s.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. So he went and acquired businesses and grew them and sold them.
Yeah.
Wow. Is your father still around, by the way?
Unfortunately not. He passed away in 1997. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, this would be a guy I would love to have to speak to. Yeah. So
Me too.
You already had. So you didn't have to learn from scratch, right? How to become an entrepreneur. You had your father right in front of you, who was doing it.
True, but there's one thing that I saw. I also decided at a very young age, I don't want to work that hard the way they work hard. I mean, I could see my parents working day and night. They were always there for the customers. My mom was cooking all the meals that would be sold in restaurant. Oh. And before we had a large restaurant, before we came from in Luik, which is probably I was about 4 or 5 years old at that time. We had a restaurant with 300 seats. And my mom was head chef. So so they knew what hard work was. And but I decided at a very relatively young age I would never want to position myself that I have to work this hard. I don't mind hard work, but and one of the other things I learned, I think very I mean, of course I didn't like my dad at these times as I love him now. He made me do things that I really thought, wow, all my friends get it and I have to do something. But he made me do something for everything that we got. And I mean, I wouldn't call my parents rich at the time, but I think I had quite a rich childhood with a lot of experiences. They didn't buy us a lot of stuff, but they bought us a lot of experience. And I think that came handy in life later. But of course, every time I wanted something, he made me do something, whether it was clean up the garbage or, take out the trash or anything. I mean, there was always something to do.
Free, huh?
Nothing came free. And of course, as a child, you don't really understand that. Later in life, you really start to appreciate that they push you so hard at times. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
But looks like your parents had this one of the main problems entrepreneurs have, that they do all this stuff themselves, which is basically being a freelancer, not an entrepreneur, right? As an entrepreneur, we should ask the who, not how question, and we should have people do the daily work for us, and so we should not have to be standing in the kitchen until 2 a.m. but yeah, I mean, I think this is something we all are familiar with, and this is also a tricky part to overcome, to actually build a system and build a team that can actually run by itself, where we would be able to take a holiday, which not so many entrepreneurs I know are able to do, or have the time to do it. But yeah, you had all this first-hand experience. And then, I mean, when you grow older in your teenage times, I don't know, 15, 16, whatever, 20. So when was the first time you made a decision what your work life will be about?
I think between, let's say, my 12th and my 18th year, I think a lot of decisions were made for me. I personally, I wanted to go to university. I knew I wanted to do something very technical. And the city where I come from, Eindhoven, there's Philips Electronics comes from Eindhoven, but also DAF Trucks also comes from Eindhoven. And so it's a technology city. And at that time there was they called it Technische Hogeschool Eindhoven, which was more like what now is called the University of Technology in Eindhoven. And this is where all these, where knowledge and business came together. This is also why these companies have grown so fast worldwide. So I aimed at actually studying there, but of course I needed to do some hard work first. And I wanted to go to work with my hands first, learn about electronics and electrical engineering. But my parents at that time said, it's a bit below your pay grade. Let's move you up to a more theoretical chain. So I went to more or less to high school and next levels. And at that time, I wouldn't say because of the divorce, but because of the divorce, there was a bit of instability in the family at the time. All good, yeah, but I mean, in the end, we're moving different places and still living in the same town. And I wasn't doing that good at school. I definitely underperformed. And then I ended up actually choosing. That was probably one of my very first choices in life that I really made as a career choice, more or less. No, I told them, I told my mom, I said, because I was living with my mom, I said, I want to go to the technical school. I want to learn about electronics. So I was playing at home. I had like a little studio at home where I, played with all my cassette decks and stuff, and I was into music and learned to understand different types of music. I was very much into soul, and when all my friends already listening to the Rolling Stones, I was still on the Beatles track kind of way. And of course the 70s was an amazing time when it comes down to music, and 80s as well. And I had like a little electronics workshop at home, and people would bring their radio to me, and so I'm soldering every night and stuff. But I needed a structured way of actually learning what they would call now IT or computer science. I bought some Sinclair computer and a Commodore 64, and all of this kind of stuff. And I was into radio. What do you call that? In radio amateur, so listening to radio, not just listening to radio stations, but private broadcasting stations. So these were the early podcasters, I would say. Yeah. So I had a big antenna on my roof, and built all of that myself, and with the help of friends. And yeah, that was a lot of fun times. Very little commitments, I would say. Still, right? Yeah.
Wow, I can relate to the electronics fascination. I mean, I think between 14 and 17, all I did with my free time was soldering, designing electronic circuits. So that I found it fascinating. So I had my little soldering thing, and I would buy all these components and chips and transistors and resistors and whatever, and I would actually build stuff like a light barrier. When at some point I had this like automatic light switch in my room, I think when I was 15. So when people would come in, there was a counter how many people actually entered the room, and it would count down when people would leave the room, and it would actually switch off the light when the room was empty. That was one of the first things, and then I also designed but yeah, this is not about me, but I can really relate to your electronics passion. So you started doing your stuff and understanding electronics, and then you actually went to study this in university, or?
Yeah, and so I went. Well, I didn't make it to university. I make it to the what they call it. It's like a middle school for electronics,
Okay.
learning electronics, and I did my first 2 years there, and then I had my very first business opportunity. And for many years, I was playing music for my friends, and buying some records on Saturday morning, and going into town, and people would invite me to their birthday party. I would bring my my little mixer panel and just a cassette deck, and you probably understand that. Because now I'm going to tell you maybe something you don't know about me, because I was quite interested once we
Bring
last
it on. Bring it on.
I saw this license plate that you have in your living room or in your office that said DJ Dano. And for many years I was DJ Frank.
Come on.
I was a professional DJ for 15 years.
For 15 years, you have been,
Yeah.
and you kept it secret from me.
Yeah,
So I have to
probably.
invite you on a freaking podcast for you to tell me you were a DJ. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, then now I know why I'm doing this. So even my good friends, they keep all these secrets, and now now they are unveiled.
Yeah, so it was actually, I'll be honest with you. Actually, I was a relatively shy guy when I was at my young age. And so we were, when I was about 16, 17 years old, there was like a couple of little clubs that we would be going to. And there was one club that it was called the Kumpel Club in German, Kumpel, it's a miners. Okay. So the Kumpel Club was like a notorious club. That was in the 70s. It opened in the late 60s. So it opened in 1st of April 1967, so it was in existence. It was one of the oldest discotheques, I would say, in the area. And when I started working there, it had 6 bars, and on a Saturday night we put 6,500 people through the door. So this is a huge. I mean, so not everybody's in the place at the same time, but some people come at 8, they stay until 10 and go to the next place. So, but on a Saturday night, 6,500 people moved through the door, and then. In April, this is 1984, I got the opportunity. They call out for a DJ. They are looking for a new DJ for the summertime. And all my friends said, "Hey, Frank, this is something for you." But I'm a shy guy. So I said, no, don't worry. No, it's not for me yet. But obviously they thought I should. So suddenly it's on a Saturday night. I'm out there. I'm partying with my friends and having a good laugh. And suddenly I hear my name called through the speakers, and I had to come downstairs, and I saw the DJ at the time. Of course, everybody knew him. He's quite a famous guy in the area. And he said, "What are you doing tomorrow night?" I said, "Well, probably watching TV." He said, "No, tomorrow night you're going to be here. I want to hear you play. Your friends say you're good. Do you want to play now?" And I said, so I was shocked. I was nervous on the spot. I said, okay. So I did. I played 2 records more or less. And at that time, it's not like the mixing that everybody does now. I mean, you're announcing stuff. Yeah. So, and there's a dance floor in front of me, and, everybody's looking at you at the moment you take the mic. So that was quite an experience. I mean, this is a bit different from a school party or a birthday party in a garage. It's some friend's place where everybody. So, yeah, there was more or less on Sundays, there was a small contest. There was 3 people, and I won the contest. And that started my DJ career. And in principle, the first year I worked just the weekends. On Friday, Saturday, I took the pauses of the main DJs, and then something actually very funny happened. But suddenly I got an opportunity, and I jumped into it. And before I knew it, more or less within the next 2 years, I'm filling 5 nights a week. Obviously, I felt the music. You got to understand, this is a discotheque that is really. It's for a very, very broad crowd. It's not like just disco goers or soul people, or you had all these discotheques. They would only play funk music or soul music. We played everything. We would play Marianne Rosenberg, Ich bin wie du, German, right? But we also would play Rolling Stones, hard rock, latest funk, latest disco, reggae music, and it would all be come into one big mass, and that really would would drive. I mean, kept people dancing until deep in the night. Yeah. So, and obviously I was younger than the majority of the other DJs that were working there at the time. And yeah, I think there was a specific liking of my boss. And I thank him for that and giving me the opportunity. And before I knew it, I was playing 5 nights a week. I've done that full time for 10 years, 10, 12 years, 10, 11 years.
Jesus.
10,
11 years of full-time DJing in the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands. Yeah.
Holy cow.
And then I had
something you never told me. Now now I feel really offended, dude. 10 years. And what did you do in your daytime when you were DJing at night? Sleep, or did you do anything else?
Meet girlfriends. Let's put it this way. That took all the shyness away over time. Sleep a lot. I mean, your day rhythm is completely, in principle, I work 10 hours. I always say for 10 years, I worked night shifts, and I did. I mean, I started work at about 7:30. I would arrive, and then, because this is the time, it's not like now, you go to a club, it doesn't even start before 11 o'clock. But at that time, at 8 o'clock, the dance floor would be packed. The first floor would be completely packed at 8 o'clock in the evening. So normally I would arrive around 7:30, and then, would go and continue in the weekends until 3 a.m. So then afterwards, we, with the whole crew, we always cleaned the place a bit. And then sometimes you had a coffee and a meal, and then you would go home. So you could come home by the time 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Yeah, but great fun. I mean, seriously, the most amazing time of my life. Fantastic. Yeah.
I can imagine. I mean, being a DJ is not the worst thing. I have my own piece of experience in that.
Yeah.
But I had no clue you were doing this for 10 years full time. And what happened next? I mean, after being a DJ for 10 years, then you decided to go what? To go university or what?
No, actually, I never went back to university. I fell into business, more or less. A couple of things happened in 1993. I mean, actually, the music has driven me into what I was doing, but also out of what I was doing. At the time, this is early 90s, I would say. We had a music in the Netherlands that became very, very popular. They called it happy hardcore. And everybody wanted more happy hardcore. And Frankie didn't understand happy hardcore at all. It's like, it's very fast.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. So I reduced the number of days that I was working as a DJ at the time. I did some gigs in Germany and in Belgium. And I even went for a week to Spain. Not to Ibiza, but somewhere in the northern part of Spain, in Lloret de Mar. Good money, but great fun. But everybody, they wanted more and more of this house music. Later in life, I only started to appreciate, progressive house stuff. But this happy hardcore was not for me. And so I was looking for something else. And there was a record store that I worked for sometimes. And then a new record store came to town, and that was more like a real. The other record store was a very independent record store, right? It's like one owner, one store, and they were selling their videos and records and vinyl still and CDs at the time. And then there was a record store that came to town, and they were a franchise, and they had a bit more power. They also had a larger collection. And I was absorbed by what they had to offer, and I had a good talk with the actual owner at the time, Ben Raamakers. And at the time, they had about seven shops and one videotheque. And I got an opportunity. He asked me, he wanted me to work full time, but I was still full time DJing. So actually, I told him, I can't do this. I can't be working full time for you, where the shop opens at 9 o'clock in the morning, and work full time as a DJ. That's impossible. So I had to make some choices. I let my boss at the discotheque know I have to reduce a bit of hours. But then actually what happened was everything changed for me. I had 2 jobs. I took on 2 jobs. I did that for 9 months. I worked my ass off. I made a shitload of money at the time, because my boss, my discotheque boss, started paying me more. Because he could see that I was even now talking to the customers while I'm during my day job, and people would come and buy records from me, and I would, talk to them about the latest music we were playing and all this. So suddenly that brought brought a whole new crowd into the business as well. So now I'm earning on two sides, but I had no life. It was only work, and that had to go. And again, a decision was made for me. My boss went bankrupt. The guy with the CD shops, he went bankrupt overnight. Unbelievable. I mean, everybody was totally shocked. And so I tried to buy one of his shops at the time. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough money in the bank to actually make that happen. Probably also not enough experience to run a shop by myself. That was totally new. I mean, being a manager of a shop or being the owner with all the rest that comes with it, that was probably too early stage for me at that time. And then, so I'm sharing this with my discotheque boss. And he says, well, I got this place next door. Why not you rent that? And he rented it to me for, in euros now, would be about 120 euros per month. So I had a telephone bill and I had a rent bill for 120 euros per month. So it was about 80 square meters. And it was way too big for me. And I more or less, long story, but in principle, I bluffed myself into the industry because I really didn't have enough money to put the whole shop full of CDs. I went to a German company in Mönchengladbach called ISS Records, and they had a Dutch manager. And I told him, I said, I need X amount of CDs from you, and I'm going to come and pay them next week. And he said, well, that's not possible. I said, opening shops, and I'm going to open more than one shop. So in principle, he listened to me, and I think he took a liking to me. And in the end, he agreed. He said, okay, I think it was like 10,000 euros worth of, 15,000 euros worth of CDs. And wow. I paid nothing. I left with a car full of CDs. And of course I did well that week because my shop was next to the discotheque I worked at. So even on weekends when I was DJing, if somebody asked me for a specific record, I could sell them more or less out of the trunk straight away.
That is very nice cooperation between,
and that was, I stayed there for 5 months in that little shop, and then I moved to a larger shop at a very super location. It was very expensive as well, but then I learned about foot traffic, right? I mean, you need footfall. I mean, if you want to do well in retail, you need people to come to your shop. So location is number one. So, and there that's where really things took off. So before I knew it, I owned one shop in Brunson. This is still the same town as where I've worked for, and lived for nearly 15, 20 years. And then from there on, I invested in other, because the CD business was not doing that well. And I had opportunities, and I had money. And so I invested in a couple of shops, so more or less I took ownership in 4 shops in the area. Then I took ownership, and that is what I invested in 7 retail stores in gas stations. So I built, I could buy these, these racks and all this. And we would, at zero cost, I would put these racks into the gas station, and they would sell the CDs for me. So before I knew it, and this is like 4 or 5 years later, I had 65 people on payroll. Yeah. So things were going very, very well. So that was really in about a 4-year period that when all of that started to happen. And then in 1996, somebody introduced me to the internet. And before I knew it, I had a big tower it's at first in the office, not at home yet. A big tower with, CD burner and all this. And that's where I learned the internet. And I found a small internet. I immediately knew internet is something where I can sell my CD products. And funny enough, I needed a database because I wanted to build it straight away. I wanted to build a website. I wanted to have one of these websites. Nobody had a website yet. I mean, some of my suppliers even 3 years
in 96, really? I mean, I think the word website was not really established in 96. I mean, there was something like CompuServe and stuff, but yeah.
And I didn't just wanted a website. I wanted a web shop where people can actually shop.
Wow.
And so I needed
96.
Yeah, in 96. So I opened my first online store in 1996, and my second one in 1998. So the first one was a CD-ROM, DVD shop. And this is the funny part. I couldn't even get the database through the internet. It was too slow. So I would get a floppy drive, 2 or 3 floppy drives per week. They would send them to me from a wholesaler in the Netherlands where I could do imports. And they had about 120, 130 titles. And they would import them for me from worldwide, Canada, Australia, and all this. And that's where I learned how people were actually collecting music. So I had clients and all over the place that would have, for instance, a Bon Jovi collection or a Mariah Carey collection. And they wanted not just the Dutch pressing, they wanted to have the German pressing and the Australian pressing and the Japanese pressing. And they wanted them in all formats, in CD, in single, in EP, in LP. They wanted everything. And yeah, that was a shitload of money to be made at that time. Yeah, so we did quite well. We moved to another place, bought a nice house, and renovated the house. Suddenly we had another little house. Then we bought a small house near the sea. So yeah, things were really, really going well at the time. Yeah.
Wow, that is very impressive, Mr. Frank. All these things you kept secret from me until today.
Yeah, if I look now back on it, when I don't tell this story often, but in principle, again, timing. It was the right time, the right moves.
So you were like one of the first people to ever set up an online store. That is.
There were some online stores, but then there was already also you could stream music from some sites in the US, and of course everybody knows that early 20 in the new century more or less, in 2000 2001 is where the Dutch government started funding people copying my business, because the Netherlands gave out money to each and every household to buy computers. And people that already had computers, they would buy CD burners with that budget. So for a long time, I stayed away from the burning. I didn't give people the opportunity to buy the empty CDs at my stores. But there came a moment where I thought, well, they're going to buy them anyway, so why not get into the business? So we were selling empty CDs, like sometimes many, many more than the actual CDs we were selling. And then there came a moment, this is in 2002, I had a young guy, this is a story that I sometimes tell because it's an important story, and what it really cracked it shook me in everything that I've learned so far. The young guy walking my store, brings 2 or 3 girlfriends, they go to the top 100 CDs, they grab a whole bunch of them, probably about 12 or 14, so good money, right? Great. And I was at the store, and my manager was in front, and so they buy it. Of course, I knew the guy because we knew each other from the discotheque. And this is where it really gets interesting. He pays. At the end, he says, "Oh, give me 2 spindles." A spindle is 100 empty CDs. So he bought 200 empty CDs and about 12 to 14 full price CDs. And he leaves the shop, and before he actually closes the door behind him, he calls me out and he said, "Hey, Frank." And so I look at him and say, "Yeah, what's up?" And he said, "Today I'm going to be making more money than you." And that rang a bell to me. It's like, holy crap! It's like, he's right, because here I am, expensive shops, paying rent, having staff, paying my taxes, and then all the other stuff that comes with it, because in Europe, they know how to tax, yeah? I mean, we live here in Malaysia, a country where still not everything is taxed. But in Europe, I mean, it's unbelievable how we got taxed. And that's really what made me the decision. I said, okay, this is it. I'm going to sell everything. I'm going to get out of this business. And decision was... And then I...
What was his hint? I mean, he said he's going to make more money than you by doing what?
Oh, he bought 12 to 14 CDs.
He's going to copy those CDs.
And he's going to, he bought 200 empty CDs. He's going to copy them today, and he's going to sell them. And by selling them, he's going to be making more money than me. He has no staff. He has no overheads. He doesn't pay his taxes probably on that money that he makes with that. And it really made me, it's not that single guy, but just what he said to me really drove the message to me, like, there is no money in this place anymore. And even I was doing well, don't get me wrong, but I had a lot of respect from, all the shops around me. We were doing quite well. And of course, there was a deterioration in revenues, but there was always new streams of revenue. I mean, I added a second online store with different products. So, from that perspective, we were doing well. We're at the forefront a bit. But I thought, I can't, this. And then what happened is I started selling some of the shops. I took back some of the ownerships, and I sold back my shares to some of the other owners. And then even I bought another shop in, it's a time of opportunity. So I knew somebody that wanted CD racks, and I knew that my shops could do with the CDs. So, there was a lot of opportunity. So, when there's a bit of money in the bank, then it's easy to make decisions. And yeah. Did I really know a lot about business? I don't know yet.
Come on, your parents were entrepreneurs. You've been investing in all these shops. I would say you had a decent understanding, probably much, much more than everybody else of your age in that place of the doing and creating business and taking advantage of opportunities.
Yeah.
So you started selling all your stores, and so today you are in Kuala Lumpur and Ululangat doing TreeTherium. So how?
What happened in the meantime?
Close the bridge for us between.
Okay. Let me keep it quick. So while I was at I learned diving since it was 1988, and I went through a bit of a diving career, as a hobby, and in 1998, so I'm already 10 years in diving, I started an online store selling diving equipment. Quite interesting, because I was trying to sell diving products, and some of my suppliers didn't even have email addresses at the time. So can you imagine, 1998, yeah? It's not that long ago. But in principle, so I had a passion for diving, did a lot of diving trips at the time. We also, during the time I had these shops, there was quite a bit of money, so we traveled a lot to the Caribbean, Egypt, and saw a few places in the world. And then I got actually very interested in historical diving opportunities. So I started wreck diving in the south of the UK. I got involved with a technical dive organization in the UK, and that's really, everything I've done so far in my life is all about passion. I had a passion for music, and I went all out. I started having a passion for reading, and my bookshelves were full. I listened to music day and night. So everything that I've done up to that moment has always been full of passion. And that's exactly how I took on the scuba diving world. It's actually very interesting, because most people learn to scuba dive and then they stop at open water or advanced open water, and that's how they make their couple of dives per year. I did more than 1,200 dives, and out of these, more than 800 were technical dives, which were long dives and deep dives. So for that, you need special equipment, you need special training. I became an instructor relatively early. That gave me the opportunity to train throughout Europe. I was part of a UK-based organization called BSAC, British Sub Aqua Club. I started training people in NATO bases all around Europe, and made some incredible friends during that time, because some of the diving that we were doing was extremely expensive. So it was not something that everybody could do. It was no longer looking at the fish, we were looking at wrecks. And we were going to the craziest places not everybody would go, because the wrecks normally are dark and deep places. And so you need special lights, you need special equipment, special clothing, and etc. Everything becomes a bit more expensive. The gases that we would be carrying would be very expensive as well. So I started to dive with people that were working for ESA, for instance, European Space Agency. Amazing group of people. To go with them on a 10-day holiday is like, wow, mind-blowing. The topics you discuss with these guys is amazing. So I'm hanging out with these guys, and I became an instructor. I became an instructor trainer, and I became an instructor trainer with 5 different organizations. So again, passion. Yeah, I wanted to do things, and if I want to do them, then I'm going to go all out. And that more or less brought me to Asia. In 2003, I sold my business, and I was coming to Asia since 1999. I was invited to come on expeditions here in Malaysia, in the South China Seas. There's a couple of war wrecks, Dutch war wrecks, there's German war wrecks, but there's 2 very large British war wrecks, Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse. So we started diving that since 1999. And once I sold my business in 2003, I thought, let's go to Singapore, but not just for a week. Let's go a bit longer. So I planned to come here for 3 months. In the end, became, long story short, is I stayed for a year in Singapore. I more or less, after 1 year Singapore, I had enough of it. It was too artificial to me. And I had a one-way ticket in my hand to go back to the Netherlands because I really didn't feel like I wanted to stay here much longer. And purely by coincidence, somebody from the diving world, more or less, we got in contact. He lives in Jakarta, but he's American, but lives in Jakarta. Purely by coincidence, he's 3 train stops away from me in Singapore. So more or less within half an hour, we meet up for a coffee. He said, Frank, I know somebody that's looking for you. And they're in Malaysia. They have a dive shop there. They actually have 2 dive shops, one on Tioman, one in KL. Go and see them. So in principle, that's what I did. I canceled my one-way ticket to the Netherlands, and I met them, American owner and a Swedish owner, and they had a technical dive operation in Tioman. They were just setting that up. It was relatively new here in Asia, and they had a technical dive shop in Hartamas. So yeah, that's more or less. I came to Malaysia, and that is now almost 19 years ago. so that brought me here. So diving brought me here. Yeah.
Okay, your friend at the train station brought you to Malaysia, and then you started working with dive shops, and then you started your property SaaS company, and now dude, I think we need another 3 hours to cover what you did in Malaysia.
The SaaS company only came later. When I came to Malaysia, in principle, I worked for this company 9 months. And after 9 months, I had enough of what I saw enough of the way that boss was treating his staff. And I thought, one day you're going to do this to me. I'm not going to be part of that. So I left, and I hung around KL for a bit. Of course, had a bit of money in the bank, so I didn't really have to work hard. And I was looking for opportunities. And I was already in the Netherlands. I was using a health product, and they just opened up an office here in Malaysia. So I thought, okay, let's see. So I walk in there with my little credit card pass, and I said, does this work here? And straight away I could buy products, and I was quite surprised. And then more or less, and that's how I started my very first years here in Malaysia. I was part of a multi-level marketing company called Herbalife. Later, they became huge here in Malaysia.
Okay.
So I was part of that. I wouldn't say the founding team, but I met. They had and this is where it actually gets interesting, because there was a gentleman that I saw in 2004 in Italy. I was at an event for this organization. And I saw him on a stage, and his name was Amartat Cohen. And he lives here in KL. And he came back from Mexico with a big story about Herbalife is setting up all these nutrition clubs. And he wanted to open up an office in KL. So I said, hey, I'll join you. So it was a relatively small fee. And I think there was about 10, 12 people that all joined in that office. This is next to KLCC. This is at the UIA building. And that's where I learned nutrition clubs. A nutrition club in principle is a franchise business, and I'm very good at franchising, as you remember from all my CD shops. So I thought this is the great opportunity. So I was very early stage, because my first club in Taiping in Perak was club number 6 in the whole of Malaysia. And so I opened up a couple of these clubs, and then that was a very, very, very interesting experience as well.
Yeah, Frank, your career has been so diverse. I mean, you've been doing so many things, but I'm sure there is something at the bottom that connects all these things that you've been doing. So Herbalife and all the diving stuff. So tell us what is the connecting part, and how did you bridge the gap from Herbalife to TreeTherium?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, because I actually get that asked quite often. People say, wow, you have such a diverse career. And in principle, the red line throughout my whole life has been IT related. So everything I've done, I mean, when I had my CD shops, I was one of the first to introduce computers and digital payments. I was one of the first to have an online shop. In the diving world, I was actually programming dive computers for doing deep and long dives. And the same thing for Herbalife. I saw an opportunity there, not just with Herbalife as from a product point of view, but I saw an opportunity there to sell actually IT solutions for people that wanted websites, needed content, writing SEO. So this is more or less, IT has been a part of my career in everything that I do. So after Herbalife, in principle, I had a bit of a gap. I didn't really know what to do yet, but I knew that IT would be the baseline. That's where we actually, I hired a web developer because I know a little bit about web development and development of applications, but I wasn't really a developer. I was more good at selling the product to potential clients. So I hired somebody that could do that for me. And then together with this person, we started slowly building up the business. At that time, I'm still living in Kuala Lumpur. In the meantime, somewhere I got married. I moved to the East Coast. I lived in Kuantan for 7 years. Very happy times. And that's where we actually extended the business. We became a Google partner. And yeah, then things started to roll. But I also, during that period, I also started to noting that digital marketing was taking a role of itself. And there came a moment that in Google Ads, for instance, because we were creating Google Ads for Google as a Google partner, it was very difficult to make good money. The margins started to drop. And that's more or less when and this I told you early in the interview, is where we rolled into the property management business, where we were working on an application from the Netherlands. We translated the application, we extended it with modules that we had locally built. And all of that was happening in my office in Kuantan. And we got a very large contract in Kuantan, and that's more or less how I ended up in the property industry. Actually, a business I bought for my wife, in principle. Yes. So that was a funny one. I didn't.
Boy, huh?
I had no idea I would end up in this industry, but actually, it's a much longer story. How we actually found that business. I was contacted in Facebook by somebody with my same last name, and she said, "I think my father is your cousin." So in long story short, we got in contact. We didn't talk to each other for 45 years. We remember the last time we met, where we building igloos in snow in the Netherlands. And this must be early 1970s. And but long story short, we're both in our 50s now, both run an IT company. And I more or less, I asked them, I said, are you guys interested to take your business outside of Europe and bring it to Asia? And there was no interest at first until one of the partners actually dropped by in Malaysia. And I showed them how many buildings were built here and how much maintenance needed to be done. So they immediately saw the opportunity and said, okay, let's do it. And that's how we more or less rolled into that business. Mm-hmm. But Corona, as it has affected many of us, brought an end to some of our contracts that we had because we couldn't deliver maintenance anymore. So even now our software packages were no longer relevant. And and then that the whole industry changed. So we're looking for a new opportunity. And this is where we came in the end to TreeTherium. And that's the new project. And that's very, very exciting. It's extremely exciting.
Yeah,
I agree. The most exciting part actually about TreeTherium is that I'm working with so many young people, new people to the industry, new young IT blood. The oldest guy, he's a head of development. He's only 31 years old, but a real tech hat. He breathes, and probably in his veins as well, is blockchain, and he wants to succeed in that industry. And we pulled in a few new people and young people, and the excitement in that industry is just absolutely stunning. And it makes me wake up every day and go to work happily. I don't see it as work, I more see it as hobby, but that's another story.
Wow, so you made it to the next level of entrepreneurship where work becomes pleasure. And we just do what we love doing instead of, having to force ourselves to do stuff. So, that's amazing to hear.
Well, I think, and I think we spoke about that earlier, Dano, is that passion. If you don't have, I see so many people go to work, but they have no passion. They just come for the money at the end of the month. And to me, I never work like that. I always work from an angle of passion. I do things that I like to do. Then the money part is, I wouldn't say easy, but it's becomes easier. Let's put it this way. Yeah. You don't have that drag of, oh, I got to go to the office. I got to talk. I need to go to the next meeting. No, every meeting to me is exciting because there must be opportunities there. Otherwise, we wouldn't be meeting. Whether that's a singular meeting with a potential business partner, whether it's a meeting with my marketing department, it doesn't matter. There's opportunities out of these meetings. So, and then in principle, as leading the company, it's my job to actually see these opportunities and connect the dots, more or less. That's what I see. That more or less, that's what I do. Every day I'm connecting dots. Yeah. But you do the same. You have your network events and you do this podcast, which I really praise you for. You're connecting dots, you're connecting people, connecting ideas, skill set.
We have yes, I have a podcast. I have actually 2 podcasts, and I have a weekly entrepreneur meeting, which you have joined as well.
Yeah.
There are some connections happening, and I believe, and I agree that this is one of the essential parts of being an entrepreneur. Is you have to connect people, you have to meet people, and you have to find opportunities, and you have to create win-win situations. So that's what this is all about.
Actually, it's an interesting one you say that, because lots of time I see people going to network events and they're looking for the win-wins. But actually, you should go in selflessly. I mean, you should be networking altruistically rather than egoistically, like, what is in it for me? But if you do it from an altruistic point of view, then automatically the opportunities will come because others will start doing the same and they will start bringing opportunities to you. But of course, that takes a bit of time to invest and also some insights to actually see that, I think. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Give first. Yeah.
I
think that is the one.
Exactly.
Give first.
Yeah. Exactly.
What would you tell 10-year-old Frank today if you got to speak to him? What piece of advice would you give him?
I would give him three main things that I've learned over the years. First thing would be never stop calling on the child inside of you. Because even now, I'm now 61, almost 60, is it 60, 61, nearly 61 next month. I still call upon that child within me to find my passions at times. I mean, when you get older, you also have more wisdom, but there's also sometimes withholding you for certain stuff. So that's why I would say, because a child often doesn't have the full view yet and all the dangers, and it comes with an open mind. So never stop calling on the child within you. And then I would say one thing I learned from a very, very interesting gentleman. His name is Jim Rohn. I don't know if you've ever heard of Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn is one of these motivational speakers that works on self-development and stuff. He's quite old when I met him, but I've had the opportunity to spend 4 times an hour with him. And out of all the words of wisdom that he's given me, he told me one thing: work harder on yourself than you do on the job. So work harder on yourself than you do on the job. And that is very true. I mean, in the end, if you are happy, your job is happy. If you are happy, your family is happy. If you are happy, your friends are happy. So work harder on yourself than you do on the job. And then I think two rules that I've given myself when I was about 20 years old. I don't know if I've ever read them somewhere. I tried to find them online, but I couldn't find them. But follow your heart and never regret anything. So in many ways, the decisions I take, I use my heart first before I use my brain, which is not always as clever, but you not always take the best decisions with your heart. Sometimes you got to use your brains. But one of the things, because there's a second rule, right? Follow your heart is rule number 1. Rule number 2 is never regret anything. So the moment I follow my heart, I can't regret that decision that I took with my heart, because I must have stood fully behind that decision. So from that perspective, I can't regret it. I might later say, that was a stupid decision. I should have thought with my brain first. But I think that's what passionate people do. So, yeah.
Oh, man, I really appreciate that. I can completely agree on the follow. I think I had a podcast recently where I was the guest. And when I was asked about, I said exactly the same thing, the follow your heart thing. Right. And I think it's a very important, and it takes a lot of freaking courage, it's very easy to follow your brain and what other people say, because, what is correct, what makes sense, what other people say is that what happens in the brain. But your heart has a different level of connection to your passion and and it might not make any sense, but and it might not even make money, but it will probably get us to have the experience that we meant to have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And I think to have this experience doesn't make sense to our environment most of the time. But it's at the same time, to me, it goes above all else. And to make a choice in life, follow your heart. To me and don't regret. Of course, it comes with it. So because how do we judge things, right? I mean, how do we say this was the right decision? Like, what is the foundation for that?
Actually, you just said something very, very interesting that makes me realize why I'm so easy to choose with my heart. Because of course I process with my brain first, right? But so if you take this part, right, this is a funnel, right? So I funnel, I see, I look, I hear, I taste, I smell. My senses are all here, but it all funnels down to my heart. So in the end, absorbing enough information. I mean, of course, I listen to my peers. I listen to what other people have to say. I get advice from people, but in the end, I don't follow other people. I take my own decisions, and these decisions are made with my heart. And from that perspective, I can't regret it. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah, man. Oh, Jamaica. That's good, man.
Yeah. Very cool, man. This was so cool. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and your story on my podcast here. And thank you for all the listeners who are still with us. I'm sure they have been rewarded with all these insights. And again, I really appreciate what you've been sharing with me. And next time I meet you, I will see you as a completely different Frank from what I saw before. So it was also like a very interesting experience for me. We will make sure that whoever wants to get in touch with you, who wants to learn more about TreeTherium, will get the information under this video. We will be very happy to share this and to share your future projects with our listeners. So let's stay in touch and see what else we can do together in the future, Frank.
Thank you very much, Dano. I really appreciate the opportunity. There's tons of other stuff that I could have told you yet, but that comes the next time over
next
lunch.
Time, dude. Next time we can do another session, bro. No problem.
Sure. All right. Thank you so much for the opportunity.